Welcome to the NBA Triple Double Show powered by SportsMemo. I'm your host, Ronald Cabang, also known as UCapper on sportsmemo.com and at U_capper on Twitter. We're going to be breaking down three of today's top games today on the big slate. But before we get into that, I do want to talk about one of the promos we got going on right now. For all the college basketball, NBA, and NHL fans, we do have a promo going on right now for each one of those sports. The remainder of the season for just $2.99 each. That includes, actually, I'm not 100% sure if it includes the tournament or the playoffs at this moment, but right now you can go to the sportsmemo.com and check out the details for this promo. It is at least for the remainder of the regular season at least for $2.99 each. So that's a great deal here, especially with all the guys that focus in on specializing on their current sports, NHL, NBA, college basketball. Definitely check out the promo going on over at sportsmemo.com. With that said, that's pretty much the only promo we got going on right now, but typically we have a few more. Just head over to the site and make sure you go there daily and see what we got going on, because cappers do have their own deals going on, packages and picks for sale. So check those out. And before you go too, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. It does help our show grow tremendously, and our Sports Memo YouTube page as well. Definitely appreciate you guys for just doing that. It does take only a couple clicks. With that said, let's get Moneyline Matt and Jeff Michaels here. What is up, guys? Thanks for joining me on a nice Wednesday slate here. Got a few games that we're going to be talking up, but do want to talk about how we've been doing lately. Jeff, how you been doing in the NBA so far?
I can't complain. We had a couple winners. I took yesterday off. I really liked the college basketball cards, so I focused a little more on that yesterday, and we ended up going 4-0 with our free play. So
nice.
Good day there. And this is actually my last show for the week. I'm headed out to Vegas for the weekend, so looking forward to that.
That's trouble. Don't meet up with Ski.
You're right. We'll be with them at the Knights game on Monday. So I couldn't pass up the opportunity.
Gotcha. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, so I actually took yesterday off as well. It's actually my first day off in probably like 2 or 3 months, but it was just one of those days life kind of took over, got a little too busy, wasn't able to get to the computer and write as much as I wanted. So if I'm not able to dive in like I'd like, research the analytics, statistics, stuff like that, you got to pass sometimes, and that's what I did. But 2-2 on the week, up like maybe like 0.6, 0.7 of a unit because my top 4 unit play hit. But, want to start climbing, want to start getting a big week together here, ready to start it on the Triple Double Show with you guys. So let's break this down.
Yeah, for me on Monday, I didn't hit the best bet. I don't know if you did, Matt, but I know I didn't.
No.
But overall that day, I was profitable. I think I went 3-2 that day. Yesterday in the NBA, 2-1, but just 1-2 in college basketball, so I got juiced out. But NBA, I'm really getting into a groove there. I'm liking what we're seeing on the board. Hopefully that continues to go here as we move forward through the season and we get into the thick of things here. Our first game on the board, let's get to that one. The Bulls and the Wizards here. We have the Wizards as a 1.5 favorites now. 228.5 is the total. I believe Chicago when I was looking at this game earlier, I believe Chicago was a 1-point favorite. My assumption right now, because right before the show, I thought that Bulls -1 and our producer have it as Wizard -1.5. Right before the show, I saw that DeRozan did not participate in shoot around and he was questionable last night. So I'm assuming that has something to do with this line adjustment here. But the Bulls, they've won 3 of their last 4 games, covered in 4 straight. They're coming off of that 99-107 loss to the Celtics. They closed at 9, I believe, and that's how they covered. They covered by a point. This is the second of a 2-game road trip for them. They've actually traveled for 6 straight games now. They haven't had multiple home games in a row since New Year's Eve. So they've had a funky travel schedule here. The Wizards, they've lost and failed to cover in 3 straight games. They lost all 3 games by double digits, but before that, they won 3 games in a row by double digits, I believe. So they're kind of going the opposite direction here. This is the second game of a 4-game homestand, so they're sitting pretty here at home. Javonte Green, Lonzo Ball, Tony Bradley are out. DeRozan seems to be questionable, but he did not participate in the shoot around like I just mentioned. Caruso is probable for the Bulls, so he might be in the lineup today. For the Wizards, Beal is out. Kispert is questionable. Porzingis and Gafford are both questionable as well. And those are their two bigs. So that's going to be interesting to see if they show up. If both of those guys are out, there's going to be no paint protection other than I think their other center is Vernon Carey, but he doesn't get heavy minutes, for the most part. So he's going to be asked to do a lot here. As far as the matchup, they split the previous two matchups with both home teams winning. Both games went under the closing total as well. So it's interesting to me to see where the total is here at 228.5. Still pretty high. Jeff, let's start with you here. What are you seeing in this game?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of question marks to be had in this game. Obviously, DeMar DeRozan, like you mentioned, which is a big offensive presence on that team. And, I've heard Matt say it before, the question marks that surround Vucevic, even if he is in the game, so with the weakened the weakened front court of Washington, or depleted and diminished at this point, they're going to need that offensive presence from somewhere. And can they really produce out of the big men position coming out of Chicago? But, they finally get back-to-back home games after this one. So that is something that I'm looking at that, could be a potential little bit of a look ahead, getting back to getting a little bit of comfort. But, in those 3 games that they lost, they've allowed back-to-back opponents to shoot at least 51%. And they played Oklahoma City, who shot 51 exactly, and then New Orleans shot 52.7% in their last game. But, they even held that one close because their offense shot 51% for Chicago. So they've won 6 out of the last 8 meetings between these two teams, and they've covered 5 out of 8. But what's even more impressive, they're 4-1 straight up and against the spread when playing at Washington. So, I think there are some questions to be had about where the offensive production is going to come from, but I'd be leaning Bulls in this one.
Yeah, that's a good point. One thing that I know about the Bulls is they show up in these conference games 10-2-1 ATS on the road versus conference opponents. They're also pretty strong to the over in this spot here, 3-0 to the over as road favorites. The one interesting note about that, though, is that they were road favorites against non-conference opponents. So first time as a road favorite versus conference teams. This is an interesting spot here. The Bulls also 11-4 to the over on their team total in road games when the total is less than 235. So when they don't expect a high amount of points, they're going over that. Is this a spot here, Matt, where we focus more so on the total here? But the other thing is DeRozan. If DeRozan is out, we could also look towards the prop section, right? Because isn't that going to be all Levine there?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I definitely need to wait on the news here, because when you have players like DeMar DeRozan who are potentially declared out, that's going to change the line. And then someone like Porzingis for me as well. I actually kind of lean the Wizards here, but a lot of it does hinge on the news of Kristaps Porzingis. The Chicago Bulls right now are 19-22, traveling on the road to face off against the 17-24 Washington Wizards. And like you said, this is a spot where the Bulls are recently coming off a loss at the hands of the Boston Celtics. And the Wizards have lost 3 games in a row in their second game at home. And this is generally one of those spots where I like to back the home team. Ron, we've talked about this a lot. You come back on your first game at home, tend to fade that team. Second game is kind of where the legs get back under you. You start shooting a little better. And again, this is a team that is coming off 3 losses in a row, definitely looking for a win. And not going to lie, both the Chicago Bulls and Washington Wizards are probably 2 of the more difficult teams to handicap throughout the NBA due to their inconsistencies. And on the last show, we took the Chicago Bulls plus 8.5 and landed on 8 right on the nose. But when we talked about the Chicago Bulls, we said, this is a Bulls team that plays up to their level of competition, and they also very much play down to their level of competition. And when playing the Washington Wizards, I would consider that a game where they would play down. But again, I need to see the news of Kristaps Porzingis, because like we've talked about, like Jeff mentioned, with Nikola Vucevic, he's one of those guys where he's not very good in that paint. And the strength of this Washington Wizards team is Kyle Kuzma and Kristaps Porzingis. So they have two guys who are bigger. They like to rebound. They like to finish around the basket. You know, Kyle Kuzma's got that three ball. Porzingis does as well from time to time, you know. But I think those are the two who can make the difference in this game on top of that. So I need to see Porzingis in this game before I can feel comfortable in taking the Wizards. And to your point, Ron, if DeMar DeRozan is out, yeah, it's definitely a Zach LaVine smash spot. You know, this Wizards team, you know, Daniel Gafford is a game time decision as well as Porzingis. So if those guys are both out, then LaVine has a clear lane to the basket almost every single time. This Wizards team doesn't play much defense on top of that. So I really do like the spot. And then one last point, if in fact Porzingis is declared out, then you pivot and it could be a Kyle Kuzma smash spot, because this is a team with the Chicago Bulls. Again, they don't protect the paint very well. They don't have a lot of big bodies, so he'd be matched up against Patrick Williams the majority of the night. And then if Patrick Williams gets in foul trouble, there's really no one else who can come out and guard Kyle Kuzma or has any adequate length to try and slow him down. So again, if I were to lean one direction in this game, it would be the Washington Wizards money line. But there's a lot of news that needs to be dropped. And again, if certain players are out, take a look at Zach LaVine. Take a look at Kyle Kuzma. I think those players could be in really good spots tonight.
That's a good point. I mean, I think one thing for me, I mentioned some stats that were towards the Bulls on the over. The Wizards also have some stats here that go to the over. 11-7 to the over at home, including 5-0 to the over if the total is greater than 227. Right now, it's coming down a little bit because of the DeRozan news. I think if DeRozan sits out, I think they have the lineup, the roster to be able to pick up offensively what he's missing. Obviously, not in like a long-term role here, but for the most part, on a one-off game, I could see LaVine picking it up. I could see some of the other players here, especially on the bench, that could pick it up offensively for one game. But I can only look towards the over. But if Porzingis is out on the Wizards side, I think that's where I'll probably sit tight, because he's one guy that affects this offense a lot, especially with Beal already being out. When Beal is out, Porzingis really steps up offensively. And then the other thing too, I mean, Gafford as well. He's one of the top most efficient offensive scorers in the paint in the league this season. I think he leads the league in field goal percentage. But I think for the most part, I'm going to look towards the over. But I really want to wait until I get official status on DeRozan and Porzingis. I think we get some value with Porzingis, with DeRozan being out. But for me, the key right there is Porzingis here to get to the over. With that said, let's get to this next one here, the Pacers and the Knicks. Pacers visiting the Knicks here. The Knicks are 4.5-point favorites. Totals at 226.5. Pacers, I feel like both of these teams right now are in really good form. The Pacers, they've won 8 of their last 10 games, going 8-1-1 against the spread in that process. In the last 19 games, they've actually kept their opponent under their team total in 14 of those. So their offense is clicking and their defense is clicking at the current moment. This is a one-game road trip versus a tough conference opponent. They did have a similar situation just a few games ago against the Sixers. They lost that game, but they did go into overtime and they covered eventually the spread. The Knicks here, they've won 4 of their last 5 games. They're coming off a 4-point loss to the Bucks on Monday. This is the second of a 2-game homestand. They head out back on the road, I believe, on Friday. Injury-wise, Daniel Tice is out. McConnell, Nesmith are both questionable for the Pacers. RJ Barrett is questionable again. Last time he was questionable, they ended up he ended up being out for the game, but he hasn't played since December 27th. He got injured, only played 1 minute in that game. So I feel like one of the key components here is whether or not he plays. If he comes in, I feel like he could kind of mess up the chemistry here, like the opposite of what we say, Matt, when we say the injured player theory. When a key player comes back, it might be a situation where we sort of fade that team, similar to what we saw with Curry and Wiggins yesterday. Matchup wise, the Knicks took the first matchup 109-106. The Pacers on the Pacers home court. The game was pretty much a pick 'em, I believe, and the total was 227.5. So it went way under that day. Matt, let's start with you on this one. What do you think about this matchup here, where two teams are really pretty much in good form at this moment?
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually kind of have a different look for this game, but if there was one spot that I would lean to, it would actually be the Pacers with the points. But the look that I'm actually going with here is actually Tyrese Halliburton over 29.5 points plus assists. And a lot of this has to do with what happened against the Knicks last time. Tyrese Halliburton has now missed this number in 4 games in a row, something that he doesn't typically do. And he also missed this number earlier this season against the Knicks, where he had 15 points on 10 assists on 5 of 16 shooting. After the game, Knicks reporter Wally Zerbiak kind of shredded Tyrese Halliburton, saying he's a wannabe all-star and guys like Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle should be ahead of him in the all-star voting. Halliburton publicly came out and said that he's looking forward to playing the Knicks, and teammates like TJ McConnell also came out in support of Tyrese Halliburton, saying that he thinks that Tyrese is looking forward to this game and that they need to get him involved early. So again, it's a little extra narrative to this in this spot, going to Madison Square Garden, playing against the Knicks. In terms of the matchup, I don't believe this is a top spot for Tyrese Halliburton, but the Pacers do a good job in making teams play their style of game. And the Indiana Pacers love to get out and run. And when you have someone like Julius Randle on the other side, he loves to fall into that trap as well, because he's someone who he loves to take as many shots as possible. He loves to drive that usage up. And again, he just loves to slash to the basket. He doesn't care what time it is in the shot clock. He's ready to roll. So I think this is one of those games where it could fall into kind of the Pacers trap, where how they play their style of basketball. And, because of that, I also do lean with the Pacers. But for me, one of my favorite plays, once again, is this Tyrese Halliburton play. It was almost my best bet. I ended up liking something just a little bit more, because as handicappers, we can only play and go off of what's in front of us. And if you're like an all-star type caliber player, like Tyrese Halliburton, you come out and say you are motivated to play the New York Knicks. You had some reporter talking shit about you after the game. I would assume the majority of human beings would be kind of fired up and want to come in and play well in that spot. So for me, you guys know how I like to do it. If you've missed 4 games in a row, I'm going to back you on the 5th. So I'm going to back Tyrese Halliburton here in a revenge spot over 29.5 points plus assists against the New York Knicks.
Yeah, I like that play there. What are your thoughts on this one, Jeff? Do you see anything on the side or the total?
I went back and forth a little bit with this one. I do like my trends and angles aspect. They're not the end all be all, but there was a lot of back and forth. I mean, I do see some advantages for the Knicks, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they're one of the top teams in effective field goal percentage allowed. I think they're 3rd and they're 4th against the long ball, or those may be flip-flopped, but they're Indiana. This does kind of go back to a little bit of what we were talking about earlier with Washington being depleted, in the front court. Well, Indiana could be looking at some issues in the backcourt. Obviously, Halliburton, this could point even more towards Matt's look, but Nesmith, McConnell, they got some injuries back there. And you got an Indiana team that, like you guys have said, is running red hot. But in the last game, I mean, they shot under 44% from the field themselves, and they still won by 5. I was looking to one that stuck out to me league-wide, a road dog that's revenging a close loss by 3 points or less, taking on an opponent that lost as a favorite in their last game, is actually 33-8 against the spread in the last 5 years. So, that one does point towards Indiana. And then on the other side, between these two teams, you look head to head, the home team has won and covered 6 straight meetings between these two teams. So, there is a little bit of back and forth here, and I might be looking Knicks team total, to be honest, because I like the over here if they do start playing at that Indiana style basketball. But if the Knicks can keep their defense where they have been, I probably wouldn't be looking over. But with that respect, then, eliminate the factor that you're questioning, which would be that Knicks defense, get rid of Indiana's offense, and just stick with the Knicks going over a potential team total in this one.
Yeah, that's an interesting look. I was going back and forth in this game as well. I mean, from the team total, from the spread, the whole bunch of different angles here. I do have my best bet on the total here. I want to talk about the spread just a little bit, but the Pacers, they pretty much covered 8 straight road conference games here. Their team total over in seven of those games. Pacers have covered 12 of the last 13 conference games where they were the dogs as well, going under their team total in only 3 of those. So I was like on the opposite of what you were saying, like where you're focusing on the Knicks. I was actually focusing on the Pacers here and their team total to go over. Maybe a look of maybe them covering the spread here. I know it opened up at around 5, and now it's down to 4.5. So the market is agreeing that the Pacers might be the side here. Another thing to mention as well, the in-season revenge here with the Pacers, 6-2 straight up, 7-1 ATS. And in these games, they're scoring an average of 122.6 points per game, allowing 118.4 per game in that spot. That's an average of 241 points per game combined. So it seems like there's a lot of points being scored in this spot. I know you mentioned the Knicks being a great defensive team at the current moment, but one thing is for me is if the Pacers come out here with the motivation, a lot of things that you mentioned, they have a lot of motivation to show up in this game, especially on the offensive side of the ball with Hallie. I think if they have a way to kind of be in the lead early on in this game, they will be the ones in control of this pace and push the Knicks to really move quicker than they really want to. You could probably hear what I'm saying now and allude to what I'm going to be talking about in the best bet section. But for the most part, I can only look towards the Pacers here. I feel like they have a lot more motivation on their side to come into this game, especially early on. So I would look towards the Pacers here. I'll talk about the total again later in the best bet section. Let's get to this last game here, the Rockets and the Kings. The Kings are 9.5 point favorites. The total is 237. I believe the total opened up a little bit higher than that, so it's been coming down. I'm even seeing 236.5 in some spots. The Rockets, they're playing like they're basically I feel like the worst team in the league at this moment. They've lost 12 of their last 13 games. In that span, 3-9-1 ATS. For the most part, it's really their offense that has been struggling. This is the first of a 4-game road trip for them as well. The Kings are coming off an easy 25-point win over the Magic, who were on the first leg of back-to-back games, so they took advantage of that spot. This is the 4th of a 5-game homestand as well, so they've been sitting at home, no travel at all involved. These two teams do face each other again on Friday. As far as injuries, I don't see anything of importance to note on either side. Matchup-wise, first matchup of the season, this is tough because Kings are coming off of a high, and obviously the Rockets are just so low at this point right now. Do you think that this line at this point at 9.5 is inflated, or what are your thoughts on this one, Jeff?
Sorry.
I think you're on mute.
Yeah, we're good. This is one that, I almost had the same approach that we said to the last game, because I do think obviously the Kings are the hotter team with the way the Rockets have played. I mean, Kings have shot over 52% in 3 out of their last 4 games. So no question they're playing better ball. But, I mean, their defense hasn't been playing great either. So this spread seems a little too much for me, in my opinion, to be laying with the Kings. Laying almost double-digit points with the Kings seems I'm hesitant almost regardless of who the opponent is. But, I think it really is at this point which one takes over. Does a badly struggling Orlando offense, playing a bad or a struggling Kings defense, which one kind of takes over and, I want to say wins the battle, but that may not be the right terminology when you're talking about the two worst aspects. But, can the offense turn it around in this game against Sacramento's struggling defense? It could be a good opportunity for that to happen. Or on the other side of it, I mean, Sacramento could turn their defense around, and this could be the perfect opportunity for them to gain some confidence if they can shut down this Houston team again. But I can't tell you with certainty which way I think that aspect is going to go. Sacramento does have an 11-10 record against the spread at home, so they do have a winning record there. And Houston's just 4-16 on the road, and 6-12 against the spread. But I think I'm just going to focus on the Kings offense here and again go with that team total over. I think that there's almost no question that they win this game. I think their offense puts up points. They're averaging like 123 points per game at home, and they're averaging over 122 in just their last 5 games. But they are allowing a lot of points too, and Houston's allowing 119 points per game on the road. So I think those aspects combined, you're looking at the Kings putting up a lot of points, but we'll see how many points Houston puts up and if they can put enough up to cover that spread.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on this one, Matt? Do you think the spread is too much, or are the Rockets just so bad at this point that regardless of the line, do you go with the Kings here?
Yeah, so personally, I think this is a game that I'm going to stay off of. If I do anything from this game, it'll be like a same game parlay or player props, things of that nature. Because again, it's going to be a high paced matchup. It's got a high total. It's got 2 teams that don't play a ton of defense. So it's exactly what you want in terms of same game parlay stuff. But in terms of maybe a spread, I don't know. I guess if I were to go anywhere, it might be the Kings. And, for me, it's just simply the fact that as I've been watching the Kings, I think their role players have been coming in and playing very good basketball. And when I look at the Houston Rockets, their role players have been doing very little. Every single night, it comes down to KPJ, Kevin Porter Jr., or Jalen Green. And I think that's a lot to put on the shoulders of 2 very young players on a very bad defensive team and a team that just doesn't have much. Like, let's be honest here. When Eric Gordon is running your small forward position, every single night you go out there, you're susceptible on the defensive end. You know what I mean? Like, this is like a 6'5" small forward. The Kings have Keegan Murray or Harrison Barnes. That's already a mismatch when you're on the outside looking in on this game. Like you said, this is a Rockets team who is 10-30 on the year, lost 7 in a row. And you guys know how I handicap and look at games. When you've lost 7, 8 in a row, I like to be that guy to back you in the 8th or the 9th. But unfortunately, I just can't do it in this spot. If the Kings were on the road, maybe I would. But, all in all, these are 2 teams that mirror each other very well. The Rockets run the 28th ranked defense throughout the NBA. The Kings have the 25th. The Rockets have the 17th pace, while the Kings run the 4th. And for me, this is one of those spots where I could see this game hanging close, maybe up until the 3rd quarter or the beginning of the 4th. And that's when I see the Sacramento Kings pulling away. And again, I go back to the role players. Guys like Malik Monk playing very well right now. Keegan Murray playing very well. Kevin Huerter, guys like that. Harrison Barnes had a 30-point game the other night. Couldn't miss. It was insane. So when you have your role players coming out playing good basketball like that, and then you have a huge mismatch in the middle with Domantas Sabonis against Alperen Sengun, if Sengun gets in foul trouble, that's it. This game's over. That's the Kings are going to cover this spread because they need someone to anchor that middle to try and slow down Sabonis. Sabonis has been playing such good basketball, and he's so good at facilitating. And when you look at this Kings team, they might be one of the best outside shooting teams throughout the NBA right now. Again, I know I'm reiterating, but Malik Monk, Kevin Huerter, Keegan Murray is balling from the outside right now. Harrison Barnes playing very well on top of that. I think there's just too many weapons on the outside for that of the Sacramento Kings for this Houston Rockets team to keep up. For this Rockets team to cover the spread, I think they have to shoot amazing from the outside, have huge games from Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr., and I do think it's possible, but I don't think tonight's the night. I would back the Kings here.
Yeah, I'm going back and forth on this one, both on the spread and the total. I think a lot of things are just pointing in crazy different directions. This might be one of those games where you kind of, because they're playing back-to-back, not in back-to-back nights, but they're playing each other in back-to-back games. Maybe this is one that you kind of just watch and see how they play each other and then figure out what to do in the next one. Because, yeah, this one is really just pointing in too many different directions. If we look at, for the most part, you're going to get a lot of fade stats on the Rocket side, right? 0-6 straight up, 1-5 ATS in road conference games with a total of 230 or greater. So these high totals, they're not covering in those spots. 5-1 to the under as well in those spots. Like I mentioned earlier, struggling on the offensive side of the ball. They're only averaging 105.7 points per game in that spot. The Kings, they've failed to cover in 6 of their last 7 games as home favorites. They've also gone under in 4 of their last 5 home favorites instances as well. Another stat here, Kings 6-2 ATS, 6-2 to the under when less rested than their opponent, averaging a combined 229.2 points in that 8-game sample size. So things on the spread going in opposite directions, a lot of things pointing towards the under, and I see the total coming down. But when I look at when I look at the Kings here in a situation where they're a home favorite of 4 or more in conference games or non-conference games, they're actually going to the over in 7 out of 8 games. So, total is really wonky. Maybe one thing that we do look at is maybe the Rockets team total under, maybe, because I mean their offense is struggling right now. So that's the only way that I could look. Other than that, spread probably, I don't know. And we don't know if the Kings will just pounce on these guys as well and just go over for the most part on their side, where they go over their team total, but the Rockets stay under. So many different angles on this one, but this might be the one where we just sit this first one out and then watch and then play the second one, depending on how this first one goes. With that said, I mean, shout out to the chat here. I'm seeing a lot of people dropping some great information, some of their own plays as well. Appreciate you guys putting this information out there, because some of these things that we're not looking at either. Anything else, guys? Before we get into the best bets or prop plays or anything like that in that game? I know Kings, we usually look at props, right?
Yeah. I mean,
oh, go ahead, man.
I'll go. Someone I like to look to in some in certain spots where they're like the softer middles, I guess you could say, is Alperen Sengun. He's definitely someone that you can look at in terms of rebound props. You can get plus money plays on Sengun, and he's one of those guys where you just kind of have to find the right night. He's very inconsistent, things of that nature. But it's going to be him versus Sabonis tonight, and obviously Sabonis is a solid rebounder. But again, those are going to be the two top guys, and I think it's going to be a fast-paced game with a lot of shots. So because of that, I think Sengun's going to have ample opportunity to go over his rebound prop tonight and maybe even get into the kind of the latter stages of the 10 rebound, 12 rebound, stuff like that. So I think that could be potentially an interesting look. And if you think the Rockets are going to hang tight, Jalen Green might be worth a look as well. He hasn't been playing all that well as of late, and you can only keep guys like that down for so long. So if you're on the Rockets tonight, I think Green could be a look.
Yeah, that's a good point. Did you have anything to add, Matt? I mean, Jeff?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I was looking at the player props before I was actually looking at the game breakdown. And you look at Sacramento's defense, they've struggled in almost every aspect against the small forward position. So I was looking at them defensively, and then, Matt mentioned when you look at the other side, you see Eric Gordon man in the three there, and there's question marks. But, I think that almost could point towards both aspects, that sometimes you have to get a little bit of that backstory on who they're defending against. But also, that's been where their biggest struggle has been against that small forward position. So if they can keep down Eric Gordon, that adds another aspect and forces Houston to score and put up points from a different angle too.
Yeah, Barnes has been playing great basketball as of late too. And if he has another easy matchup against Eric Gordon, I've never seen Harrison Barnes play so good. Like, I'm not gonna lie, he's been balling lately. So he could be in another spot tonight.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing I was looking at the chat here, and Shalin J, he mentions, like, if you like the over, look at the Kings team total over, because you don't know what the Rockets will do. I definitely agree with that sentiment there. And if you like the under, it might be wise to take the Rockets team total under, because that they would be the drivers for that under as well. So I think there's some correlation with some of the plays in this game. All right, with that said, let's get to the best bet section. Jeff, let's start with you here.
Yeah, I'm headed back to that player prop market for this one. And this is kind of where that Utah thing really that Sacramento thing really stood out to me, because I almost looked at Houston small forward and then, you put together Eric Gordon. But another great angle that I found looking against San Antonio defending power forwards, which more specifically tonight points you towards Jaren Jackson Jr. for Memphis. I'm looking at him going over 24.5 points, rebounds, and assists in this one. He's gone over the total in 4 out of his last 6. He's been hot recently. He just fell short of this number in their last game. And when you look at the Spurs, like I said, this is also a play against them defending power forwards. They've allowed the second most points in the league at that position. They're allowing over 24, 5th in rebounds allowed, 4th in assists allowed. And Jaren Jackson Jr. is a guy that can get it done at every level and every aspect of the game. Not to mention the fact that San Antonio is one of the worst teams defending power forwards from outside the perimeter too. So Jackson's gotten 2 3-point shots in 4 out of his last 5 games as well, I believe. And San Antonio struggled immensely from out there. They're worst in the league against everybody, regardless of position, and they're second worst in the mid-range. So Jackson can score from every level, and it gives him the ability to score there as well as grab a multitude of rebounds, which we've seen him put up double-digit boards in numerous games this season. So there's the ability there as well as multiple levels for him to score tonight. So I like him over 24.5 PRAs.
Awesome. Did you have anything to talk about on the premium side? I know you're big on college basketball as well.
Yeah, I had I like the card over there today too. So I actually have a 5-star, a 5-unit college basketball play that I loaded over there. It's a 2-for-1. You also get a 3-unit sides play as well. But it's my first one of 2023. So after a 4-0 day yesterday, I really like this one. So we rolled with it.
Yeah, we're gonna need to connect after the show on the college basketball stuff because I'm starting to pick it up with conference play now because that's where I really focus in college basketball. But Matt, let's go with you here. What's your best bet for today's show, and what do you got going on the premium side here?
Yeah, premium side right now, I have one NFL play up, and I'll get all my NBA plays up after the show today. We'll definitely have 2 or 3. I have a couple player props that I'm already ready to plug in, and a couple team total bets that I'm actually looking to tonight. And shout out the chat today. You know, you guys have been on fire. Love when you guys put out your angles, play, stuff like that, comments in. And for today, though, my best bet, we missed last one with Giannis. Honestly, that Knicks team did a good job putting up the wall. But today we're going back to the Bucks. It's not going to be Giannis this time. It's actually going to be Drew Holiday, kind of contrarian, over 27.5 points plus assists. And this is very similar to the Tyrese Maxey play that we did last week that hit. You know, Tyrese Maxey was coming back from injury, ramping his minutes up. And when you're ramping those minutes up, the book's number is still a little bit lower than typical. And it's kind of an opportunity to pounce on it. And that's how I feel about Drew Holiday tonight. You know, this is Holiday's 4th game back from injury. He's missed this number in 3 straight spots. And since returning from injury, he saw 19 minutes, 2 games in a row. And just last game saw 37 minutes. And he actually had 24 points plus assists against the Knicks in a game where, once again, he did not play very well. Against the Hawks, however, you know, I fully expect him to have ample opportunity tonight. You know, this is a Hawks team that likes to get out. They like to run. And they also give up a lot of points. Last game on top of that, Giannis Antetokounmpo had 22 points, one of his worst games in recent memory. And I think Giannis is going to get it tonight as well. And the guy who really tends to help Giannis get going is Drew Holiday with the assists. You know, not only can Drew Holiday go out and score, he's also one of the primary facilitators for the Milwaukee Bucks on top of that. Since returning from injury as well, Drew Holiday is shooting 11 from 31 from the field and is typically around a 45% field goal percentage shooter. You know, in the paint, outside, a little bit of everything. So he kind of does it all over the place. And then another angle that I really like for Drew Holiday tonight is he's going against Trae Young. Trae Young is potentially the worst defending point guard throughout the entire NBA. You know, I'm sure that the Milwaukee Bucks are going to run a lot of pick and rolls, trying to get switches from Drew Holiday onto Trae Young so he can take advantage. If you watch Drew Holiday and you know his game, he also likes to post up. He likes to back you down. He likes to give you a little shimmy, kind of an up and under, stuff like that. And I think it's the perfect scenario against someone like Trae Young. And then again, I think Giannis is going to be way more active, slashing to the basket, quick bounce pass, dunk, things of that nature. And when you look at Drew Holiday as well, last season against the Bucks, he averaged 19 points, 7.7 assists, and 4.7 rebounds at 26-point mark. So just under this line. But you got to remember that's also with Chris Middleton in the game. Chris Middleton takes shots. He takes usage percentage, a little bit of everything. And when guys like Grayson Allen, Pat Connaughton, Javante Carter are shooting like absolute garbage, I think it's a good spot for Drew Holiday, and I think he really gets it going tonight. Again, a little bit contrarian, but I like Drew Holiday over 27.5 points plus assists.
Shout out to the chat there. Yo-Yo Mendez, he just mentioned, Matt, I don't know if this affects your play, but Trae Young was just announced out about 10 minutes ago. So I don't know. Does that affect your play at all or what?
I mean, I definitely like it better with Trae Young because he's such a bad defender and he's really smaller. You can post him up, stuff like that. But who's next? Is it Aaron Holiday?
I mean, you would think they would put DeJounte on Drew, right?
No, yeah. I assume that from the beginning, but I think they're going to run switches at the top with the pick and roll, stuff like that,
Gotcha.
trying
Yep.
to get favorable matchups. So is Aaron Holiday the number 2 point guard?
I think
So
so.
Aaron
I'm
and
not.
Drew.
Yeah, Aaron's a bum. So I don't really like that matchup. You know what I mean? Like, so if Aaron comes in, I'm fine with that as well. DeJounte's the one that you want to avoid. DeJounte's the one with the sticky fingers. He's got those long arms. He can strip you, stuff like that. But I mean, a lot of this, when you guys know how I kind of run this stuff now. When I see someone miss 3 games in a row, when I see the minutes ramping up, that's generally when the volume starts ramping up as well.
Yep.
And sometimes I'm just playing the spot. I'll even just leave the team out of it. And in this matchup, however, the Bucks are a good matchup. They play a high pace. They run. They give up a lot of points on top of that. And Giannis as well, coming off a bad game. I think all of it is kind of mixing in for the perfect storm for Drew Holiday to go over this number tonight. So again, I really do like the spot.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. So shout out to the chat there. Ski Profit in the building here. We were just talking about you, Ski. I told Jeff not to meet up with you because you only cause trouble in Vegas there. But all right, my turn for the best bet here. I am looking towards one of the games that we talked about earlier, that the Pacers and the Knicks here. I'm looking towards the over there. I did mention some of the stats that took me to the over. The Pacers 7-1 to the over. Their team total in their last 8 road conference games. They've also are 6-2 straight up, 7-1 ATS in revenge games. And in those in-season revenge games, they're scoring an average of 122.6, allowing 118.4. That's over 240 points combined in those games, and we're seeing a total tonight of I think it's 228 or something like that at open, and I believe it came down to 226.5. So we're seeing extra value here for us if you like the over. I like that the total is coming down because it's giving us some extra value here. Another thing to note too, the Knicks are 4-2 to the over in games where they beat their opponent in the most recent matchup. So they let up a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. And that's why I was also looking towards the Pacers in this matchup. In these games where they already beat a team, they don't focus too much on the defensive side of the ball. Another thing to mention, 5-2 to the over in conference home games. In those games, they're averaging a combined score of 232. And again, we're seeing that total come down to 226.5. We're seeing some more value there. So everything to me pointing towards the over here. I know the Knicks have been playing better defense, but this is a situation here where I think there's a lot of motivation on the Pacers side to push this pace and play up to their opponent here in this spot. I think the Pacers do a really great job as far as pushing this pace here tonight and really focusing in on attacking the paint there. This might be a situation where we see some guys like Mitchell getting in foul trouble here. With that said, that is my best bet. On the premium side, I do have one play in the NBA and one play in college basketball. But I do think I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to get this game here onto my premium card, but it's strongly leaning in that direction, especially if we continue to see the total coming down and I don't see any extra injury news coming out. So that's the way that I'm going to go in that one. That is my best bet for today. As far as that goes, next show is on Friday, same time, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard. It's going to be me and Moneyline Matt. With that said, make sure you guys go to the website, sportsmemo.com. We have that promo deal that we talked about earlier today on the remainder of the regular season, NBA, college basketball, and NHL, $2.99 there. And then also make sure you hit the like and subscribe button before you go as well. Like I said, it's going to help us tremendously with our channel, with this show specifically. And with that said, we'll see you guys on Friday. Till then, good luck with all your action. Peace.
Peace.